Yo, what is up guys? Delboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. So this video is just a quick preview and prediction for Anthony Joshua versus Dillian Whyte 2. This fight goes down on August the 12th, takes place at the O2 Arena in London, and of course this fight will be broadcast by DAZN. In the UK, this one is actually a pay-per-view, and quite frankly, at the price point, I think it is too high, but ultimately, listen, I'm not going to be buying it, but I will be watching it. We live in 2023. If we have pay-per-views that we deem not worthy of a price, or not worthy of a pay-per-view tag at all, then we can still watch the fight. That's the advice I'd give you guys. But the fight itself, I think it makes sense really for both guys in their careers. Anthony Joshua is on the comeback trail, as we know, lost back-to-back to Alexander Usyk. He had one fight back against Jermaine Franklin, where he outboxed Franklin, but didn't look too spectacular. And of course Dillian Whyte, he himself is on the comeback trail, got knocked out by Tyson Fury, and he had a close fight with Jermaine Franklin, where he just about squeaked by on points. So both guys are on the comeback trail, and when you look at this fight, a loss for either guy really is detrimental if they want to, continue to try to attain some sort of heavyweight legacy or win world titles, So yeah, all things considered, although I don't agree with the price point for this fight, I think it's a perfectly fine fight considering where both guys are at in their careers. And I suspect it will be entertaining for as long as it lasts, to be honest. But yeah, let's briefly break down the tale of the tape. We shall start with the favourite, Anthony Joshua. He has a record of 25 wins, 3 defeats, 22 of his 25 wins coming by way of knockout. Dillian Whyte has a record of 29 wins, 3 defeats, 19 of his 29 wins coming by way of knockout. Anthony Joshua is listed as 6'6" with an 82-inch reach, whereas Dillian Whyte is listed as 6'4" with a 78-inch reach. So Joshua, 2 inches taller and has a significant 4-inch reach advantage. Both of these guys, of course, are orthodox fighters, and Anthony Joshua is 33 years old, whereas Dillian Whyte is 35 years old. So Joshua, to me, he is the much fresher fighter between the two. Not only is he 2 years younger, but he sustained less punishment in his career. Dillian Whyte's been knocked out 3 times in his career. Not only that, had more fights, had some really hard fights along the way as well, such as the Joseph Parker fight, for example, the Rivas fight, the Chisora fights. He's had a lot of hard fights in his career, more than Anthony Joshua, and even before boxing he was in kickboxing, so his body sustained a lot of damage, I would say, from combat sports, more so than Anthony Joshua. And I think that's a key factor in this fight, is the freshness or lack thereof of the fighters involved. I still think Joshua physically actually has a lot left, whereas Dillian Whyte, not so sure. But anyway, now the tale of the tape is out of the way, let's briefly break down what I believe each guy should do to stand the best chance of winning. And listen, I think I'll start with Dillian Whyte first. To me at least, he is the significant underdog in this fight. What makes him somewhat live is his punching power. We know Anthony Joshua can be hurt. Dillian Whyte hits hard, particularly with that left hook. So listen, he's always got a chance to a certain degree, but it's about finding a way to maximise those chances of landing that shot when it comes to Dillian Whyte. I don't think a long fight suits Dillian Whyte, quite frankly. I know Joshua doesn't have the greatest gas tank, but neither does Dillian Whyte, and Dillian Whyte really loses shape in a hard fight, and he's there to be hit, and I think his chin really is deteriorating, so I think a long fight doesn't suit Dillian Whyte, because ultimately the holes are going to appear as he gets more tired. Quite frankly, I think Dillian's best chance is to catch Anthony Joshua cold, and when I say catch him cold, I mean early, more than likely within the first 4 rounds. I think that's Dillian Whyte's best chance in this fight, and to do that, For me, Dillian needs to be aggressive in this bout. He needs to be aggressive and he needs to be fighting on the front foot. Try to make Anthony Joshua uncomfortable right from minute one. We know Joshua, well, many of us have suspected Joshua of having some mental demons in recent years, particularly since that Ruiz knockout loss, the Usyk losses. He strikes me as a man who is second guessing himself. And what better way to test that mentality, to test that belief, than catching him early on with a big shot. See how he reacts, you know? See where that takes him mentally. And yeah, I think Dillian needs to take risks early on and to be aggressive. Dillian, for me, doesn't really have the dexterity to be an elusive guy in the sense of side-to-side movement, things of that nature. I think Dillian's best shot in this fight is to approach it out of a high guard and ultimately try to use that long jab, that long lead jab, as a battering ram while trying to walk Joshua down. But of course he needs to make sure that guard is super tight, and when he fires that jab as he's coming in, he needs to bring that jab hand back as quickly as possible. That's one thing Dillian doesn't do particularly well, is bringing shots back to his chin after he's thrown them. So bringing his hands back to his chin. He leaves a lot of openings when he opens up, so he needs to be tightened up defensively if he's going to fight in the manner in which I think he should. So yeah, he needs to try to pressure Joshua early on. Quick feet, again, behind the jab, behind the high guard, and try to take the distance away from Anthony Joshua and get up close. Yes, Joshua's got a very damaging uppercut up close, but at that point in time, Dillian, for me, needs to really try to work Joshua over. Going to the body is one particular aspect where he could have success. If you go back and watch the first fight, people talk about how badly Joshua was hurt to the head in round 2 by Dillian Whyte's left hook, and he was hurt. But watch round 3 of that fight. Dillian actually had a bit of success working the body, and at times it looked like it was getting to Joshua. So if I'm Dillian, I'm going to try and get close and work that body immediately, as well as trying to, you know, loop those looping overhand shots to the head as well. Try to overwhelm Anthony Joshua. Essentially bum rush him, because I can't see a scenario as to where Dillian Whyte is out-jabbing Anthony Joshua and outboxing him. Dillian does have a good jab. It's powerful. It's relatively quick for a man of his size, but he's not really consistent with it. I can't see him doing it for 12 rounds. So for me, Dillian needs to be super aggressive in this fight. He needs to be super aggressive. He needs to be throwing shots on the front foot, closing the gap against Joshua, and really making it uncomfortable. Because again, aside from just like, if he boxes with Joshua, unless he lands one perfect shot, I don't see him winning that fight. I see that as a way of allowing Joshua to dictate tempo, set himself, and then maybe land big shots. That would knock Dillian out. So, yeah, all-out aggression from Dillian Whyte. He's expected to lose this fight. Many people suspect his chin is totally deteriorated, which I agree with. I think his chin has got a lot worse. So the longer you're in there, the longer Joshua has to knock you out, right? And I know being aggressive gives Joshua chances. Of course it does. But I think Dillian really needs to roll the dice in this fight, because he didn't do that against Tyson Fury, in my opinion. I felt he was way too passive against Tyson Fury, showed Fury way too much respect. If he does that again in this fight, he will get knocked out. So yeah, the game plan for Dillian is simple. Be aggressive, take risks, let your hands go, see what lands, see if you can catch Joshua early, catch him cold. And again, if Joshua does get hurt, we'll see how he reacts. Maybe he goes into a bad place, which gives Dillian a chance maybe. So yeah, Dillian just needs to be aggressive. I don't think there's anything Dillian can do from a real technical standpoint, or like a super out there, you know, outside the box game plan standpoint that would trouble Joshua. I don't see it. As for Anthony Joshua, he of course now is working with Derek James, and in the fight with Jermaine Franklin, Joshua was boxing a lot more. He was boxing to orders, I would say, primarily working off the jab, sometimes taking the half step back, making Franklin reset, really just doing the basics. And, you know, he outboxed Franklin in that fight. Wasn't spectacular, you know, But he did completely outbox Jermaine Franklin, from my estimation. And I don't think he would be silly to have that style again at the start of his fight. While Dillian is fresh and maybe aggressive, it may be a good idea for Joshua just to get behind that jab. Stick the jab, half step back, turn out, make Dillian reset, rinse and repeat. Double up the jab, which is what he was doing at times in the Jermaine Franklin fight. Just keep Dillian occupied with the jab. Maintain range. Don't give Dillian any silly shots. Don't get involved in a tear up early on. If I'm Joshua, if I'm training Joshua, I would try to get him to box to orders early on. I know there's this whole aspect of Joshua not being a technical boxer, like a technical long-range boxer, but he's certainly better than Dillian Whyte, and he can do it better than most heavyweights, aside from the likes of Fury, Usyk, etc. So I think that approach would work early on. Joshua would get himself into the fight, settle down, maybe, more than likely build a lead on the scorecards, which is where you would imagine Dillian may start to get a little more reckless, which is where Joshua can maybe, not just be throwing the hard jab and keeping distance, but then maybe merging to his boxer-puncher style, and then try to tag Dillian Whyte coming in, countering the jab with his straight right hand is a great example. Joshua actually has a pretty good counter right hand, and he can counter over fighters' jabs. And that could be a shot that could work against Dillian Whyte, because Dillian, as fights go on, he's got the tendency to throw the jab and bring his hand back down low, then back to his chin. And sometimes he'll just leave the lead hand low. So for me, the jab is there to be countered by Anthony Joshua. If Dillian gets more aggressive as he gets more desperate, again, jab, 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 half step back, draw Dillian in, and the uppercut's going to be there. The lead uppercut is going to be there for Anthony Joshua. Again, Dillian is the type of guy who doesn't exactly have great upper body movement. He doesn't exactly have great dexterity. When he applies pressure, he's kind of leaning over. His head is on center line. He doesn't move his head side to side. So if you can draw Dillian in, the uppercut is going to be there, because his guard sometimes is quite wide also at his elbows, which, that means an uppercut can land when your elbows are not tight together. The uppercut's got a much better chance of landing when you hold your guard like that, which is what Dillian does at times. So yeah, I want to see Joshua box early on behind the jab, because he does have a good jab, and he can move a little bit for a man of his size. He's certainly got enough movement to keep Dillian at arm's length. Dillian doesn't exactly have quick feet. So yeah, box the early sort of first 3 to 4 rounds, build up ahead of steam, get comfortable, build a lead on the scorecards, and then start to look for the openings against Dillian Whyte, because they will be there, there's no doubt about it. And maybe even then start mixing up the offense. One of Joshua's best combinations is the 1-2 left hook. Throws that combination really well. Unfortunately, we haven't seen it in recent fights, but it would be a good combination to use against Dillian Whyte. He had success with it in the first fight. Again, Dillian is no defensive wizard, and especially when he throws combinations, as we saw against Joseph Parker, he's not defensively capable enough to defend against combinations. So again, as the fight plays out, as it wears on, I want to see Joshua mix it up. Again, the 1-2 left hook combination I think would be money against Dillian Whyte. I really do. Especially this version of Dillian Whyte, who is even slower than he once was. And even just for good old basic 1-2 as well. I think Joshua's got all of the physical tools to beat Dillian Whyte and beat him well. For me, it's just really about remaining cautious early on. If he gets past the first 4 or so rounds, I think Joshua really... It turns into the territory of, I think Joshua can really knock him out when he wants, essentially. Whether he's got the confidence to do that is another matter. But I want to see it in this fight. I want to see Joshua, again, box calm, box composed early on, and then really start to unload and go for the kill, essentially. It's been a long time since I've seen Joshua fight a fight in that mindset, where you can actively see he's looking for a knockout. And that's what I want to see. And I think he can do that against Dillian Whyte. He just needs to be careful in the early rounds, because that's when Dillian's going to be most dangerous. So with that being said, I know Joshua hasn't put in a so-called world-class performance in quite some time, but I suspect that changes to a point against Dillian Whyte. I think Joshua's going to win this fight. I think he's going to win it well, and I actually believe he'll stop Dillian Whyte. He'll knock him out in rounds 5 to 7, I would say. I think he's going to knock out Dillian Whyte. I don't think Dillian's got the punch resistance to make the distance, and I think Joshua knows that. And when he's comfortable, I think he'll detonate either the straight right hand, the 1-2 left hook, or the uppercut will knock Dillian out. I think this fight is it's a good comeback fight for Joshua it's a good fight for Joshua at this stage because Dillian is vulnerable, but he still has an element of danger there that Joshua needs to be careful of in regards to Dillian's power. But in terms of skill, in terms of height and reach, in terms of who's got what left, I think this fight favours Joshua in quite a big way. So I've got Joshua by knockout, rounds 5 to 7, and I think he'll actually look pretty good in this fight. I think it's smart matchmaking, actually. But I do think it'll be exciting. I do think it'll be exciting. You never know with Dillian Whyte and Anthony Joshua. It could turn into a barroom brawl because of the history these two guys have. But I suspect Joshua will box well and take Dillian out mid-rounds. Anyway, share your thoughts below. Beanie Guy Delboy. Peace.